you so much for joining me on the Creative Awakening Now podcast. I'm your host, David Matters, and I'm here to bring you stories, interviews, and insights relating to the topics of creativity, inspiration, and practice. My intention is to connect with other people who employ a heart-centered approach to the artistic process and to share this profoundly inspiring content with anyone who cares to hear it. I hope you enjoy. This is a dream, and a dream is never the same.
Now through my life I have found fear comes in all shapes and sizes. Well, a master of the fortress, a master of disguises. So we used to run free.
My guest this week was Drew McManus. Drew is the lead singer and songwriter of the band Satsang and creates music from his soul, fueled by the ever-present task of personal growth and the beautiful life that he found in the Beartooth Mountains of Montana. Commenting on his difficult upbringing in Des Moines and residency in Chicago, McManus says, "I grew up in an environment where aggression, violence, abuse, and addiction were always present. It made me a lot of things, angry, sad, and ashamed. I hated my story and I was a slave to addiction. I tried for so long to hide from the reality of my story and the reality of how beautiful life could be. It wasn't until an intense spiritual experience led Drew to break his cycle of addiction. I had changed my entire outlook on life, on everything," says McManus. "I began to realize that had everything not happened to me exactly like it did, I would not be exactly who, where, and what I am right now." In an effort to share his revelation with others who may be in the same predicament, Drew began to write every day. "I was flooded with the urge to write down the lessons that kept unraveling themselves in this surrender, and the connections I began making with other people by making this music, vulnerable and open, began to change everything. These songs are a statement of lessons learned and a further understanding of self. The whole story is what makes it beautiful, not just the good bits." And my interview with Drew was super great. I met him in his hotel room right before their show last night at the Asheville Music Hall, which I believe sold out. I went to the show as well, and it was just awesome. Beautiful energy in there. And yeah, the interview is just super cool. We go into all his creative process and kind of the whole birthing of the band Satsang and how he's gone about that professionally and family life and the whole kind of stigma of conscious music and what that means personally and professionally and all that. So it was super fun. I got to ask him some questions that I've been wanting to put out there in this scene for a while. Considering my podcast, considering the topics that I go into, it's nice to talk about this stuff with a professional who's doing it and really doing it, because he's a very legit person. He is very sincere and authentic, and at least that's how it seemed to me. And his music clearly reflects that. So, and he loves what he does, and that's my favorite thing about this is you can see on stage, you can see off stage, he's very passionate about it, and that's what this is all about. Bringing the creative experience and taking it from the heart, from a deeper place than just accomplishment or vanity or anything like that, and having a kind of awakening with it. And I believe that Drew's kind of embodying that. So, shout out to you, Drew, man. Good job, killing it. Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy this interview. Stick around to the end. You can listen to a song, the single from their new album, and definitely check out what they have going on. It's really good stuff. Also, I hope you'll check out whatever I have going on over at creativeawakeningnow.com. You can check out some past blog posts that I've been doing. I've been super busy and haven't updated that in a while, but there's a bunch up there. Some writings that I've gotten published about creativity and spiritual practice and different things like that. Listen to the music from my band, Life Like Water. See some videos, all kinds of stuff up there. Stay tuned. I got lots of really cool, exciting things coming up and some great interviews as well. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Much love. If you guys want to help the podcast, please leave a rating and review. Go into iTunes. It really, 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 really helps. And I just don't push it enough. So if you're listening, please do so. Go on there, leave some stars, leave a thumbs up, whatever it is. I'd really appreciate it. And until then, hope you guys have a fantastic weekend or week whenever you're listening to this, and keep on smiling.
Well, I said go do you. Now travel far, share your stories and earn your scars. It's you. Said you are the one.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thank you, Drew, for having me over here today and agreeing to do this.
Happy to be here, man.
That's awesome. You're in town just for the night, yeah?
Yeah, we actually have a 10-hour drive tomorrow morning to get to St. Louis, so we have to leave like super early.
Nice. Late night and early morning. That's how touring life goes. Well, I'd love to get into all that, but it'd be really great just to get the whole history of your creative process and what has brought you to where you are with Satsang and that evolution, because I know it's been through a lot, and you got some really cool stuff happening. So
yeah, I started the project with one other guy about 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago. After a trip to Nepal, I'd spent a handful of years in southwest Montana where I still live, and I was just rock climbing and skiing, and I just was doing that whole thing. I just spent most of my time outside. I worked at an outdoor shop, and then in the winter I worked on the ski hill. So, leaving alcohol addiction and kind of sifting through it, an abusive childhood and just a lot of trauma. And how I kind of sifted through it was I spent a lot of time in the mountains, a lot of it alone. And then that all kind of culminated in a trip to Nepal, and I kind of started writing when I was over there. And those songs later became stuff that was on The Story of You.
that was your last album, or
2 albums ago.
2 albums ago. Yeah.
Yep. And when I first started the project, a lot of it was like aggro political shit, like that was how I was kind of like filtering, I was trying to filter my worldview through that. And then once Carl got involved, I kind of started playing through some of these poems and shit that I had written when I was in Nepal. And so they became songs, So The Story of You, the reason I called it that, because I was like looking at the whole thing, and like sometimes you can write and be really removed from it, And Nepal, I feel like, was kind of the first time that I was writing like I was just like bleh, just kind of putting words down. So by the time I started turning them into songs, I was just kind of like, whoa, man, this is your story. This is you like figuring it out. So yeah, I made that record. And that was just me and Carl in a room, and like we made it in like 5 days.
Nice.
Yeah, in my office at home. And then we made Pyramids, which at that point we had been touring for like a year and a half, pretty much nonstop, doing the like playing clubs, but playing for like 4 people every night, or you're just I just lost money all of the time. But through that time, we got a handful of like cool opening gigs, a couple good festival slots. I became friends with a lot of songwriters that I really liked, like Nahko and Trevor, and I became homies. And I just kind of started like fostering these relationships. And then during the writing of Pyramids, I asked all of our friends to be on the record, and pretty much all of them said yes. So that was Pyramids. It was just Pyramids. I feel like I kind of became a musician when we were making that record. Like I started caring about song structure and musicality, and
It's funny how the studio will do that too.
yeah, and bridges and parts, and and Carl, who plays bass and sings harmony at the show, is like, fuck man, he engineers everything, he mixes everything. Layers harmonies, he has this, I think Carl and I's relationship is so special musically. He has ability to decipher my very non-musical explanations of things and know like exactly what I mean.
Oh, you mean like creating the music and talking
yeah,
about
where I'm like, I don't know Pro Tools and all of that stuff. It's like this, I'm trying to learn some of it, man, but it's, my brain doesn't really work that way on the like, that techie stuff. It just doesn't. So he has this really beautiful ability to kind of help me translate what I'm hearing in my head into like a real thing. Dude, and sometimes, and he takes liberties too, and I can't think of many times that he's taken liberties where I wasn't pretty stoked on it. And then we went through a member change. We lost our old drummer, and hired our new drummer, Ben, who is like, I've had a drum crush on him for years. I met him in Hawaii many, many years ago. And in that time, I also, we started making a little bit of money, so I started buying guitars that I wanted and amps that I wanted and pedals that I wanted and started making sounds that I wanted. And so the new record is chock full of that. Lots of Motown in there.
Yeah, listen to your single off the new record, and it's really well done, obviously, but it's very different too. There's a lot of
What's so funny is that song too that's the only song on the record that wasn't produced by Carl and I.
Who was it produced by?
This dude named Matt Williams. He is a mad scientist. And that was all Matt. I wrote the song on an acoustic guitar. We sent this very rough recording to him, and he sent that back. But the rest of the record is it's like Motown, neo-soul. There's some 70s rock vibes in there. I feel like I'm actually, again, I think the new record is really, I just love some music so much. And I used to always just be like, well, I'm just a songwriter. I'm kind of finding myself as a guitar player and an actual musician and not just a songwriter. I'm really, really stoked about the quality of it.
Nice.
So that's where we're at now as far as discography.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's good to kind of get that background with it. And before we started talking, you pointed out when I reached out to you that we had this random connection with an old bandmate of mine from my old band Gypsy Moon, who you lived with in Iowa. Totally random connections, and it makes me. These kind of things always happen with these interviews. Not that I know people, but it's the music community, especially in, I don't want to say this scene, but relative scenes that obviously we run in. The community aspect of it is huge.
Yeah.
And like you said, you made friends with some of these like well-known musicians, and then when you reached out, they were like, "Of course, I'd love to play on your record." Has that had a major influence in your development as a musician and?
A little bit. I would say, no offense, but like with Nahko and Trevor and them, no, not at all. Professionally, absolutely. Just kind of watching how things are done early on, kind of learning how things are done and kind of how to run a business and stuff like that. I would say the most profound friendship for my career has definitely been Michael Franti. He took us on 2 tours in 2017. Yes, 2017. And man, for a guy that's as successful as he is, and I know he doesn't do it often from what I've gathered from other people, but he checks up on me all the time. He's never not available if I have questions or need advice. And he's really gotten me kind of turned on to just starting to care a little bit more about length of songs and how to make things more universal. He always talks about this thing called the swing vote. He's like, I don't need, he's like, when I made my old records that were super politically charged and all that, it was the same 400 people. Yeah. Every town, it was the same crowd. He's like, you got to make people feel something, and something that's universal, So like the next single that we're releasing is a song I wrote for my kids. And it's just like anyone with a child is going to hear, it doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. It doesn't matter what your spiritual beliefs are. That love that you have for a child, if you have a child, you're going to connect with that song. So I started to care more about that, about how I'm making people feel. The thinking comes after, if you make someone feel something, then they'll process the words later, that I would say has definitely been the most profound relationship, music-wise.
Well, yeah, that's pretty huge.
Yeah.
He's got such influence. And
he's just been at it forever, too, dude. Like, the thing that most people don't know about Michael Franti is, prior to Spearhead, he had 2 hip-hop projects in the Bay Area that were very successful. He had a hip-hop group called Disposable Heroes of Hip-Hoperacy that went on tour with U2.
Wow.
At the high, in 93. So he has just been, in it. He's been in it.
Yeah, that's a successful career.
Very much so.
How did you link up with him?
It's my favorite story of my entire career.
So, great.
there's a venue in St. Petersburg, Florida, called Janus Live. It's this cool. There's like this gate. You walk in. There's a big like festival style stage, and then it's like squared off by these buildings, these big high rise like condos. And then the crowd is here, but the green rooms are up here on this balcony, so none of the fans can get up to that balcony, because of security, etc. You know, so because of a show we had previously played down there, the promoter for this Franti show reached out to us because they needed an opener, and we're like, hey, do you want to do this Franti show? You know, was like, oh my god, that's a dream. Yeah. I know I'm gonna lose money and I don't care. But the thing about that venue is that balcony. In my head, I was like, man, if we can play, there's no way he's going to sit in his green room and not watch the show. And there's no way he's going to sit in the bus because these green rooms are the shit. Like, amazing green rooms. So I was like, but there's no way he's going to hear us play and not go out to this private balcony and watch the show. Yeah. So I was like, all right, we're going to do these 3 shows. You know, we somehow got linked on these other shows with him in Florida, and I was like, there's no way, like, I'm totally going to invest here. We're going to go down. Michael Franti's going to watch us play.
Oh, because you're driving from Montana.
I flew everybody, and it ain't cheap to fly out of Montana, man. Yeah. So I was like, I spent literally everything I had. I think I had like $350 in my bank account when I left. And yeah, I just had this theory that he was going to watch the show, and he was going to be like, this is fucking awesome. I want to take you guys on the road. And that is exactly what happened. We got done playing, and the sound guy came up, or one of the stage crew guys came up and was like, dude, he was up there getting the fuck down on that balcony while you were playing. Wow. And I was just like, oh, shit. Yeah. So, you know, the next couple shows, he was coming on stage when I was coming off, and he like gave me a hug, was like, that was good, man, that was good. And I was like, hey, man, I'd love to spit a verse with you. And he kind of like, okay. And I was like, fuck, man, that sounded so dumb. And then the next day at soundcheck, he's soundchecking and he's just like, Drew. And like waved me, and I was walking, and some man runs up and hands me a cordless mic. And I just had to like start freestyling, you know? Yeah. But yeah, long story short, that happened. And then about a week after we left Florida, we got an email from his team saying that they wanted to take us on tour for the whole summer.
Wow. And was that kind of like a big break for you? Like,
that was complete fucking game changer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's so great hearing those kind of stories, and it does happen, you know. I've known a bunch of people who've encountered similar, not maybe that cool, that's pretty epic.
Yeah, it was wild.
But something like that where it's just like the goodness, you know, like someone like that who's got such heart and such soul, and like his connection through his music is there, and if he feels it through you, I can totally understand. He'd be like, great, you know.
Yeah.
It's a big thing with it. And so I want to kind of steer it towards that direction a little bit too, and I want to say what you said earlier about like, you know, what Franti said to you about knowing that you have this thing, and maybe it's politically charged or spiritually charged, but not necessarily needing to throw it in people's faces, and you know, kind of using everything else to bring people in. You know, how do you feel about? You're very clearly connected to the conscious music scene in some degree. I mean, your lyrics, most of what I've heard, are very conscious, you know, like spiritually involved in different things, and that has become very popular in a certain sense, and it's also become very criticized in a certain sense, and for good reason, both of them. Yeah. And I'm in a similar trajectory to a certain degree with what I do, and I have to balance that all the time, where I'm like, this is a true soul, heart yearning that I have that I want to express, but I'm also like very conscious of the fact that it's becoming like a cliche, or it's becoming this like really irritating thing sometimes for people, where it's like, you're talking about these deeply profound things, but you're, you know, like, what are you really doing? You know, that kind of thing. How do you speak to that as somebody who's really involved in it, both personally and musically?
You know, I think, man, that's a great fucking question. For me, to be honest, I feel like you can tell when it's conceited and not when it's forced. We have a lot of people that, I see a lot of it. I see a lot of people trying to like be this thing because they see the rise of it as a genre. So they're like trying to do this formula that's gonna get there, and it doesn't work that way. You know, like, as far as the like the network of artists that I know is it's like real recognizes real. You know what I mean? You can tell when it's someone trying to do this thing, or it's like someone just like, I don't know, man, this is just what comes out when I write. I don't know, you know. The other huge thing for me, as far as looking at my own art, is I'm not ever concerned with who likes it. Like, I'm not ever tailoring anything to anyone, because to be crude, I don't really give a fuck. I just don't. I just want to make music that feels good to me, and I know that I personally have a pretty rigorous standard for what I like in music. So if I can make something that I'm like, I would listen to this, then I just trust that. Yeah, it's a hard thing too. You know, I think a lot of it is when you're in the music scene, especially in the festival scene, there's like the drugs and alcohol and people not being faithful to their partners, you know, and I don't drink alcohol. I exercise every day, try to on the road. I train mixed martial arts. And I have kids, and I couldn't love my wife anymore. So I have zero interest in being unfaithful to my wife. I have zero interest in getting fucked up. I can't not keep it real. I have too many people counting on me. So
that's accountability is one thing.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So yeah, it's a hard thing. You know, it's weird that it's becoming a thing, because like I remember, you know, I remember trying to explain it even just a couple years ago. I remember my management like trying to tell people like, you know, this is going to fucking work. You know, like, you want to get on this now because it's going to work. We used to always have to sell this concept. And,
like the spiritual thing? Like,
yeah, you know, they were just like, well, should we pair them with a reggae band? And we're like, no, I don't think that'll work, because they're not really into the whole, like, songs about weed and girls thing. So maybe that doesn't work. And, you know, it was really just trying to figure out who the fuck to pair us with was always the thing. But now that we're able to do our own thing, and we have our own ticket sales and all of that, and that's kind of leveled out. You know, we don't have to sell anything. But it's crazy. I can say, as far as festivals go, you know, last year we were getting, and I mean, we've had some success in the last year, but I mean, this time last year, we didn't know what we were doing festival-wise. We weren't getting festival offers till the end of February and March, and, you know, this year by Christmas I was saying no to stuff. I think it's because people recognize it. I think there is like a global awakening where people are just kind of demanding more out of life in general. I think they're kind of starting to realize that the bill of goods that they've been sold wasn't really a bill of goods. You know, and it's hard too, because people, when they connect with your music on the level we do, I always hang out after every show and I want to meet everyone and I want to hear all the stories and take all the pictures and do all the things, but it's like, you know, there's these stories of people like, oh, I met so-and-so and he's actually an asshole and this and that. And it's like, well, what you don't know is that, you know, I might have gotten an argument with my wife on the phone, and because I got 4 hours of sleep last night and I drove 9 hours to be here and I have to wake up at 6 tomorrow morning. And it's not you, it's just me. I'm just being a human and having a day, you know?
For sure.
Yeah, so a lot gets lost, you know. I think the other thing that people want the music thing to work out. When you're an artist, the idea of being able to make a living at your art is so appealing. So I think a lot of people get so caught up in that they're like, okay, well, this is working.
Yeah, it's trending.
Yeah, it's trending, so I'm going to do that. You know, there's this one kid that keeps popping in my head. I don't want to blow up his spot, but I, you know, released this video, and it was just like all of the key things. There's like a Buddha statue and a prayer scarf and like hitting all of the points, and I'm just like, man, you can see that that's not it, you know? But
yeah, well, that's the thing, is like the buzzwords and like the image and, you know, like there's a level of authenticity that comes with it when you're true to yourself, true to your path, and you're doing it because that's who you are, you know. And how do you separate those? It's really hard. It's all about personal connection and knowing that individual. But I had to bring this up in this conversation because I was recently, not just recently, it happens all the time, where I talk to people about like the conscious music scene, and whether you're really into it or really against it, there's a lot of weird friction that goes on between like authenticity and really just kind of putting on a front, you know. And I like to tease out, you know, where people stand in that, because it's really hard to tell just listening to someone's music. Like, you can, you know, some of my favorite artists, don't talk about spiritual things at all, but they're deeply, deeply connected people. And some of the other people that I, do or do not like, but are like really in the conscious thing, like you meet them off stage and they're not at all involved in that. They're really vain, And
that's a real thing, man.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is, for me, I feel really blessed to have the grounding that I do. Aside from having my wife who would never not keep it 100 with me, and kids and bandmates too, that if I was ever being a dick would not hesitate to be like, dude, you're being a dick.
Yeah.
I have a life outside of my music, you know what I mean? I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and like mixed martial arts. It's like a huge, it's 1/3 of my life. So when I'm not doing music, I'm surrounded by people that don't give a shit that I do music. It doesn't matter. It's not a relevant thing. So I think if you don't have those tethers keeping you firmly planted to the ground, that it's really, it would be really easy to lose your shit, man. My mantra is always that the healing that occurs from our music is real, but the adoration is not. Because the people that have any sense of adoration or admiration for me they've never met me. They don't know anything about me. So that adoration is based in the way they're feeling from the music, which that part is real. That part is very real. And that's always my mantra. I say it every night when I go to bed after a show. I'm like, because people say crazy stuff after the show, like I said, I like to do the meet and greet thing. And remembering that what they feel, whatever that song helped them through, whatever that thing is, like that's the good shit. The rest of it is just human emotion. I say that to say, if you don't have tethers to the real ground and you're drinking all the time or whatever, and you have a bunch of people around you telling you you're the shit, you have no reason not to believe it. I've seen how that plays out, man. In the last year, I've watched friends spiral into a depressive mush, because this image of them is this whole thing, and they're not actually that. I think it's also important to remember songwriting, the mind frame I'm in when I'm writing a song, or anyone is in, is a special place. You're not there all the time. You're there maybe 1% of the time. You're in the space and you write this song, and then you go live your life. We just happen to like, this is what we do. We go sing all those songs that we wrote during that 1% of the time. So we're like in them a little more, Yeah, it's a hard thing, man. The human condition's real, man. Like I said, I feel really blessed to have the tethers that I do. Because I don't want to judge or fault anyone, because I can look at it completely objectively or subjectively. I'm not sure which one works there. And understand how people become vain.
Yeah, well, it's easy enough to see it when you're in it.
Yeah.
And you can really be like, oh, I could totally be a self-absorbed dick and, just want my own way and
it wouldn't matter.
Take the appreciation. And it's just feeding into it. But I like what you said, though, where it's like, when you're not basing all of your identity and yourself upon like this one thing, like this music or your fame or whatever, and you have family and you have your martial arts and all these things, like where people don't give a shit about you being a successful
doesn't matter. You get choked just the same.
Yeah, exactly. Or when you have kids. I have a kid as well, and I know exactly how that is to be in the music scene and to go and play this awesome show, and you do great and the fans love it, and you get off stage feeling 100, then you go home and it's the middle of the night, you're tired, and your kid wakes up and you got to take care of him. And your wife's like, get your ass out there, you were gone all week or whatever. Like it's this real thing that keeps you so grounded and so humble. And if you don't have that, you obviously couldn't understand it, but it's something of that nature. I feel like is a necessity to keep your head level.
It's hard. I think to each their own, but for me, I think alcohol is a big conduit, man, for self absorption. In the music industry or entertainment industry in general, it turns conscientiousness down and ego up. Man, you turn that down and that up, and you got people around you telling you the shit. It's problematic.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I would like to direct you a little bit more towards the creative side now. I think all that stuff's great, and I'm really happy to talk about it with people and have like an honest idea about it because it's so real. But the creativity side of it, for your music, you have. It was funny. I was listening to some of your stuff earlier, and I was like, damn, there's like a lot of lyrics in this song. Like he's just like going and going and going. You know, how does that creative process work for you?
Dude, I'm just a fucking waterfall. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
I feel like such a dick sometimes when I talk about it. I don't get writer's block. I've almost gotten in car accidents writing on fucking iPhone notes. Like, I don't know what happens, dude. The shit just like turns on and I'm just like, blah, 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 blah.
Has it always been like that, or is it more recent?
No, man. It was like I feel like about the time we were recording Pyramids and those songs were already done, and I was already like, fuck this record, I want to make another one. You know, like I was already on to the next one, and then, you know, I have like 3 records that I'm just like sitting on, and like, dude, I want to do a hip-hop EP, like, yeah, I want to do a fucking folk album, like, I'm never not writing. A lot of it, I listen to so much hip-hop, man. And that was kind of my first... I don't know, you know, I grew up listening to The Dead and Petty and Bob Dylan and all that stuff, but I think influence-wise, I remember when I heard Do You Want More by The Roots. I remember that record. I had it on a fucking CD disc. It was like one of 2 CDs. I had this dumb little side satchel that I carried my Walkman in, and I had disc 1 of this Bob Marley compilation that was all of his early ska shit. And Do You Want More by The Roots. And the way Black Thought spit, it activated this thing in my brain where I was like, I want to do that. So when I write, it typically is me getting like way out of the way, and I just like start. If I can get the first couplet down, it's game over. It's like, I write, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to make the hook, and then I'm going to write the verses around this hook. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I'm going to write this verse and let the song tell me what it's about as it comes out. Yeah. And by the time I hit 16 bars, I'll probably have an idea of what the hell the song's about. And then I'll write the second verse.
Coming off of that
hook, yeah. So sometimes you can actually listen to some of our songs and they don't really make any... Sometimes they're like, those 2 verses weren't really cohesive, you know? It's like, a cool story, a perfect example of that is So Far, which I assume is the single you listen to. You're like, damn. Yeah, there's a lot going on in there. So, that song, I wrote the first verse the day we found out we were going on tour with Franti. And in my head I was like, I want Franti to do the second verse. And he was into it. Then I showed it to Trevor Hall. Trevor's like, I want to do the verse on it. I was like, okay, cool, respect. And then I kind of was like, okay, cool, well, it's a race to the finish. Trevor Franti is going to have the second verse of this song. And it was actually here in Asheville where I wrote the second verse. Holy shit, okay. So I had been waiting, and I wanted to get this record fucking mixed, mastered, like done. Because every other record literally was turned in an hour or so before the deadline. And I was like, I'm not doing that this time. I want to sit on it and have it done so I can listen to it for months before it's released. Yeah. And, you know, Trev was in the middle of the fucking craziest tour ever. It was like 3 months straight. And then he's like, I have 2 weeks off, and then I go to Europe, and then I come home for 10 days, and then I go to Bali. And I was like, okay, cool. So you're for sure not doing the verse. Yeah. Franti was finishing up a documentary and touring that and was releasing his own record. And it just kind of hit me like, it would kind of be a dick move of me to ask either of these guys to like, hey, man, I know you're busy, but like, could you do this? So I was just like, fuck it. So the thing that's really special about that song is I've never written ever. Like I said, everything I write is just super fast. It all comes out. And that was written from a space of like, oh my God, my dream's coming true. I can't even believe this is real. This is the coolest thing ever. And then in between that first verse and second verse, I fell into a deep depression. We got done. We toured straight through. And I lost touch completely with who I was. I didn't feel like I really had an identity anymore. I was just like, oh, I am just this thing. I'm just this music thing. I just play music and travel around, and that's all I do. Our drummer left because we were touring too hard. Madison House dropped us. This is all like within 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I decided to take 7 months off. I was like, I'm going to take 7 months off. My wife was pregnant. So I like fell into this depression where I was just like, oh my God, and I have all these other agencies talking to me, and I have to pick a new agent, and I don't want to pick a new agent because it doesn't seem logical to pick an agent when I don't feel like fucking touring. And it was just this whole shitstorm. And then I was like, whatever, I'm just going to train. So I got really into martial arts again and was just training at the Grindhouse. And then after this break, we went and headlined our own shows. We had never done that since the Franti thing. That was what was so nonsensical about Madison House dropping us, was they didn't even give us a chance to like go out and see if we were worth anything. Anyway, so we self-booked. My management booked this tour for us, and we sold out all but 2 of the shows the summer of 2018, right after my son was born. My son was born. 3 weeks later, we hit the road. Boom, sold out all these shows. It was just like, fuck, son. Yeah. So at the end of that run, Asheville was, I think, it's like second to last show of that tour. I was like, Carl, bring the mic out, put it in the closet, and I just fucking went in. Just like, so. Yeah. That was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's great, man. That's the kind of stuff I love. And that's what I really like about doing this show, is like getting into the deep stuff about, you know, people are like, oh, this is what happened. Making
it was wild.
You know, like, I love that kind of stuff. And I like to hear that about people's creative process, because everyone's got a totally different approach to it, you know, but whatever works for them. And I know you got to go to
we got 20 minutes.
We got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about coming from basically what you just described. I know exactly how that feels.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a period of my life when I left my old band where we were doing all this stuff, and my whole identity was wrapped up in it. We were like recording with this really well-known producer. We were opening for these great bands. We were headlining this club that we wanted to, you know, all that stuff. And then basically everything came crashing down around me. And that was the same thing. My daughter was about a year old at this point. We needed to move away. We needed to like, we were broke. We were living in this little cabin. The roof was leaking, all that crazy shit. You know, I was so depressed and didn't really know what my identity was. And I left. I quit the band. We moved away. I walked away from everything and like basically went into solitude. And I got really deep into my own personal spiritual practice, meditation, and my own creative process of writing. But I think maybe even more than any of that was like really focusing on my relationship with my family and my relationship with my art.
Yep.
And when I kind of reconciled those and realized that they weren't separate and that they could be unified, that was one of the biggest creative breakthroughs I ever had, and spiritual breakthroughs. And it sounds like you have a very similar situation where you kind of, you know, you just need to take time away and reassess. You know, can you talk about that connection of family life and the creative life, and like how you deal with it? And you know, you're on tour, your son was just born, like you got a family back home, you're doing all this stuff, and like success is there, but it's also hard to leave their family behind. Like, can you just talk about that subject in general for you?
Yeah. You know, it's the baby threw a whole different spin on it, because so I have 3 stepchildren, but I've been with them for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So they're my kids, you know, their dad's not in the picture, so I mean, they're my kids. But we had kind of gotten into this flow, you know, where they're old enough that they can help out. You know, our oldest is 18, he graduates high school this year. And so there was kind of this flow, not that it was easy on my wife or anyone for me to be gone, but there was kind of a flow to it. And with the baby, it's a whole different thing. You know, I'm looking at this little boy that looks exactly like me, and you know, it was the hardest thing ever to leave. But for me, I'm a big believer in, there used to be this thing, you know, when I was growing up, I was always kind of attracted to the like Basquiat's and the kind of self-destructive artists, you know. And I think that shit's so whack now, man. If your relationships are all shit, then your art is shit to me. I don't care how good your damn songs are, like, that's not it for me, man. I gotta have, that's my health. You know what I mean? Is my family being good. You know, now there's also a level of provider role that I'm able to to be now that we're doing better. So that helps, like my wife's starting her own business and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's the most crucial thing for me. Like I said, that family, and nothing else means anything if that isn't there to me. You know, it's not something I'm willing to sacrifice for, and we just keep kind of molding. I think that's the thing, is having a partner that's healthy enough and intelligent enough and like understands enough. You know, I think sometimes she understands how important what I'm doing is more than I do. So she's so supportive of me doing it. And Chris Berry once said to me that when you're a touring musician, the biggest thing that your kids are going to learn from you is that they can follow their dreams and live an unorthodox lifestyle. And if that's all that my kids get out of me being a touring musician, is like, I don't have to go sit in a cubicle all day. Like I can make my own way if I work hard. You know, that's money. That's killer to me. You know, the huge thing I can't put enough emphasis on, shout out to Grindhouse MMA. Like, that place, man, it transformed my entire identity and how I saw myself and like what it means to be a man and what connection, mind-body connection is to me. You know, and sitting in a room, like I said, there's like, whether you are a Republican banker or a fucking songwriter on hiatus, when you're submission grappling, you know, it just doesn't matter. And, you know, that played a huge role for me. I think, to tie it back into what we were talking about before, I think when you see the people that are like not really centered in any sort of authenticity, it's because they don't have anything. There's no balance there. You know, for me, the balance of me being at home and on the road, like, it has to be there, you know. And if my wife said, I don't want you to do this anymore, then that would be the end of it. That would just be what it is. It's happiness for the rest of my life if I pick my family. It's a fucking win. You know what I mean? Yeah. That would never happen, thankfully. Yeah. But yeah, it's at the heart of everything I do. Everything I do is for them, you know. Like, just this morning as I was pulling my suitcase to the van, I was just like, fuck, I'm so homesick, man. I'm just so ready to go home. And it's like, you're doing this for your family. It's like what you're doing out here is you're building a foundation for your family. So it's never not, and it's a real cool fucking job, man. Yeah. It's the coolest.
It's pretty good stuff.
Yeah. And, you know, for me, I like, as far as balance goes, like, here's how I structure shit. You know, so I go home for 12 days, and then we're gone for 3 weeks, then have a month off, then tour for 3 weeks, and then festival season where I'm gone for 3 and 4 days at a time because we're flying places, etc. We'll do a fall tour, and then I'm going to take off like Thanksgiving to Easter, I think. You know, so that big chunk of time off, I completely step away and am just like, kind of hand the helm to my management, and I'm like, okay, don't let them forget about us. Yeah. You know, because I'm leaving this world. I'm going back into stay-at-home dad mode. Yeah. You know, and I think that's the other thing too. I don't know how your stuff is structured with your family, but when I'm home, I'm a stay-at-home dad. So like, I did the math recently because I was like really bumming about leaving for tour, and I was like, okay, if I had a 9-to-5 job, how much time would I get with my son? And I added it up. I spend like 5 times as much time with my son as the average father gets to spend with his son with a 9-to-5 job. Yeah,
because I'm come home fulfilled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not fucking off for somebody else. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, you know, man, yeah, it's important for me to be. That's the other thing with jiu-jitsu and MMA in general is like everyone there has kids, and it's like, not that I can't relate to people that don't have kids, but it's like, you know, it's just this thing of like, hey. Yeah.
You get it.
You understand the most intense love that another human being can ever experience for something, you know? It's like,
and the most complicated relationships and, you know, human dynamics that exist.
How old's your daughter?
She's 5.
Oh, man. So, yeah, you've been all the fun stuff. Yeah. Full on personality.
Full on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those things. And in the music industry, you know, like, it's obviously tons of people have kids, but it's it's not, like, people a lot of times look at it as a burden. Like, if I have kids, I can't do this for a living, you know,
Yep.
or I'll be a terrible father. And like, I was told that. I was straight up told that by people when my partner was pregnant. Like, you basically have to choose music or this, because you'll be a bad father if you do this, and you'll be a worthless musician basically if you do that. And it's like, no, come on now, I can reconcile this. You know, it's a ton of work, but
Yep, and that's just it, man. You know, my mission, you know, that I try to carry to people through our music is accountability and hard work. I believe with those two things, not on some like third grade teacher bullshit. I believe with those two things, anything and everything is possible. If you're fucking accountable and you're being honest with yourself all the time and you work hard, the world is your oyster, man. Like, we have fucking computers in our pockets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We can get from one side of the country to the other in 6 hours. Like, there is fucking no excuse to not be having a podcast or being a touring musician or trying to sell your art or fucking inventing an app or like whatever it is. We live in like the most profound forward time ever. So like, man, people saying like, you can't do this and be a father, you can't do this and do that, those people are fucking whack. It's because they can't do it.
Yeah.
That's why they're saying that shit. You know, like I said, that was why I was like calculating the math and all that, you know. And it's hard when they're babies too. Like, I even in my head on this tour was like, man, is he gonna like forget about me? He's 10 months old, you know.
Oh yeah.
We were FaceTiming the other day and my wife turned the phone around and he, Dad, like he started losing it. Like, he was like looking in confusion, like, why is he trapped in that box?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like what is that? So it's like, yeah, I think that's an important thing to recognize too. Society and people up in it is like, that's typically the symptom of like, that's what bullies do, right? Is that like, oh, I have this deep insecurity in me, so I'm gonna like project that shit onto you. Like, I don't play that game, man. I know that I am, and a lot of it is diet and exercise and all that, but I think my spiritual practice is keeping myself open to be a vessel of boundless spiritual energy. You know, I look at days like tomorrow, fuck it, man. 5 hours of sleep, I don't care. Like, I can go, I can do it. I'll wake up and take a cold shower, and I'll fucking work out when I get there. Like, I think the more we tell ourselves, like, yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can, is it's just like, you're not bullshitting yourself. You can. There might be some rough stuff in the way, but like, you just got to go for it, man. And I think it's awesome that you left that scenario and just started anew, man. That's the jam.
Yeah.
That's the fucking jam. I'm excited to hear some of your stuff. I haven't heard any of your music. I'd like to hear it.
Well, I'll definitely make sure you do. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got to get going. I just wanted to ask you one last thing in conclusion. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things, actually. It's been really cool, well-rounded. But talking to people about success and, whatever relative success is, it's complicated. But what do you think you could, like, give somebody in the way of wisdom for, like, on your path? You're clearly on a path, and you must be feeling like you're getting somewhere that's within reach, and you've manifested it, or whatever it is. You put in that work, and you've had that goal in mind. Do you have any bit of advice for people in similar situations? Musicians, artists, whatever, following their dreams. They're like, I'm doing it, like, I'm working hard, but the success is kind of trailing, like, do you have any kind of insight into that?
Yeah, I think the manifestation thing has been huge for me. Like, sometimes it makes me shake my head because I'm just like, damn, you just like playing this game in your head and then it happens. I think there's something to it, man. The Muhammad Ali's of the world, I think speaking your shit into his existence is super important. I think it's also, like one of the biggest things that I see is, again, with that accountability, there's like a level of honesty that people have to have. And not everyone that wants to be an artist is supposed to be in the way that they think they might. It's like, I see a lot of people that, it's like, man, if you would just quit slamming your head up against this music wall, you might be the greatest custom cabinet maker that the world's ever seen. you know? So I think honesty about what it is you're choosing that it's actually good. You know, like if you remember American Idol, people used to do oh, Simon Cowell's such an ass. I was like, oh, he's saving people a lot of time, you know. But I think it's important to be honest about realistic goals. But two, you know, when I was starting Satsang, I went from working full time, playing on the weekends, to working part time and doing 3 and 4 day runs. Mm-hmm. And then that into using my paid vacation time to go on 2-week tours until I made the leap. Incremental progress is of the utmost importance. And little goals. And like we were talking about with technology, man, fucking reach out to people. I read every single Instagram. Instagram has that weird thing where if you don't follow someone, you can't see it. But Facebook Messenger, like all of these things, like people hesitate to reach out. You know, and work too, man. Like I said, you know, I think that's the most important thing. If you want to be a guitar player, you need to play your guitar all the time. Mm-hmm. If you want to be a songwriter, people ask that all the time. Like, man, I'm just struggling to find myself. Just write every day. You know, if you write 20 songs and keep one, that's a win. Mm-hmm. You know, pretty soon you end up with a record, you know. So yeah, I think that, man, so much just being realistic and not scoffing at incremental progress. I think it's so easy to do of like, well, man, well, I only got 10 new Facebook likes this week, or, you know, only 10 more people came to this show than the last show. It's like, well, that's fucking 10 more people. Yeah. You know, it's hard, but I think that's it. And surrounding yourself with people that are good people. You know, I think that's such a thing of like, especially as you know, in the art world, is there's just so much drugs and alcohol and bullshit and hanger-ons and like part-time motherfuckies that are just not goal-oriented. Like, if you want to accomplish goals, you need to be around people that are also trying to accomplish goals, you know? Yeah. And that's a huge thing. No one wants to do that, but sometimes you got to trim the fat and just be like, okay, cool. Like, for me, if I got my family and my bandmates and like 3 other friends, I'm straight. If those 3 other friends are like constantly pushing me and motivating me, then that's all I need. I don't need 400 friends, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, just be careful about the people you keep around you.
Nice, man. That's all great stuff. It's solid advice, and it's cool to tap into that place of like the real work, you know, and not have to be all spiritual about it, you know, which is always happening. And I like that your music can seem like very like spiritual, you know, satsang, you know. Yeah. But you're clearly a very down to earth person.
I try my hardest.
You're not afraid of saying fuck.
Yeah, it's actually a problem, man. Yeah.
No, I love when I connect with people on that like real way where, you know, it's not just like we're sitting in your hotel room right now, you know, and I don't feel weird about it. Like, I don't feel intimidated or anything, you know. It's like, it's a good thing. Yeah. So, I respect you. I respect what you do. I appreciate your music, and I look forward to seeing your progress as it goes.
You go to the show tonight, yeah?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to, for sure.
Yeah, I'll put you on the list.
Cool, man. Thank you. Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, like I said, I'm really grateful for you being here.
Thank you for coming, man. I'm glad it worked out.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much for listening, and we will catch you next time. Lessons in falling morning rain. Catch them in buckets and jars with the warm rain.
I say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. It's time to start walking, to stop talking. The snakes are a-stalking and I'm done barking. The revolution starts and ends with me. Actions and words take accountability. Well, I will rise up cause I am not scared. Born with a body but my soul unimpaired. He that bring justice, he that bring truth. Wisdom of all things that we're going through. Nobody wants to say, so I'm saying it. The game's never playing it. The evil, yeah, we slaying it and laying it down for the people who are down for the cause. Not affiliated to the rule of unjust laws. Take the power to the people, let the people move the power. Make decision and revision to prevent the final hour. Answer to the prayer, surrender to the calling. Spirit people rising, Babylon falling. Living ever present in the grace of Allah. That's where only truth come when I'm swinging my jaw. So Jah, please guide and protect these words. Let the message of the vestige be heard. Hey, I say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. And spent 2 years, toured almost straight through. Friends with my hero, said now what should I do? Did everything but relapse to try to make it through. Reassess my life and reassess the crew. Fall of 2017, it all hit the fan. Proud of the music, started hating the man. Feeling all depression and I started asking why. It finally made sense when my wife birthed Malachi. Never thought I'd make it here. Dream is life and now it's clear. Balance is the medicine, the family gonna take us there. Shout out to Grindhouse for making me a better man. Ego under wraps and getting better with my hands. Finally learned to trust when all them shows sold out. Blessed by unbelief was moved to tears, no doubt. Thanks be to you for being in this music. If y'all done listening, then I'm done crooning. Finally made sense why we got to this ground. It's y'all to teach me, not the other way around. Maybe it's cyclical, but anyway I said it. Never take it for granted or forget it. Let's go and get it. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. Every individual control their own dominion, so keep yours clean. Every individual control their own opinion, so make yours scene. Every individual control their own dominion, so keep yours clean. Every individual control their own opinion, so make yours scene. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. I say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are. Say we got so far to go, even though we come so far, yeah. We gotta push on so they know, and they don't forget who we are.